part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
And welcome to another edition of the Red Guy and Rhoda podcast here on the Press Play Podcast Network, brought to you by MGM Northfield Park. Shout out to our outstanding producer, Mo, filling in for Dave Emmert today to make sure you're able to hear us in the podcatosphere. And Michael Regai, we are thrilled, excited about today's podcast. As joining us on the R&R podcast today, legendary Cavaliers point guard Mark Price to talk about the Cavs, Darius Garland, and much more. Mark Price, how the hell are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, guys. I am doing great. I guess you guys are having a lot of fun in Cleveland right now with the basketball team this year, huh?
Yeah, no question about that, Mark. It's a very strong, very unified basketball team. And, you know, Kenny and I have been looking forward to discussing with you so much about, because Mark, quite frankly, it does have a great resemblance to your 1986-87 Cavaliers team, and then throughout those next couple of years. So I want to start with that, Mark. I mean, you seemed like it was the perfect draft pick and perfect acquisition for then general manager Wayne Embry and your head coach Lenny Wilkens. Had you interviewed with them before the draft during your junior, senior years at Georgia Tech with Bobby Cremins? And did you have any idea that they were looking to want to make you a Cleveland Cavalier?
I had no idea at all. It was a different world back then, as you well know. There wasn't social media, didn't have cell phones, didn't have any of that stuff. So you were a little bit in the dark, to be honest, as a player coming out. I mean, your college coach might say, hey, this team's called about you, that team's called about you. But, unless you were like a lottery pick, top 5, 6, 7 pick, those guys probably had a pretty good idea where they were going to go. And after that, we were just kind of sitting around waiting to hear our name called.
And you had to wait till the second round, 25th pick, and it's the Dallas Mavericks. But then the Cavaliers, after picking Brad Daugherty, somebody who you went against in the ACC, #1 overall after the Roy Hinson trade, they get the compensatory I'm a stupid owner Stepien pick at number 8 to get Ronnie Harper to add to the team. The previous year, Hot Rod Williams, he had to be cleared in the Tulane point scandal situation. And then you at 25, and they trade for you. So all of these guys come together, Mark, basically in one draft, because Hot Rod had to wait till you guys all got there. So for you, getting to team up with those 3 guys and grow the way you guys did, what was that like? And take us through the development of your first couple of years, because we want to compare it a little bit to what Darius Garland is going through right now.
Well, I think, it's eerily similar, although I would say from the get-go, Darius, he was a lottery pick, and he was a high pick. So they threw him in the lineup right away, early. I was in a situation where there weren't a lot of people, I don't think, in the NBA that thought I was a lock to be a starting point guard in the NBA. My size, whatever, what I look like, just the whole, for some reason, there was a lot of misconceptions about me, so to speak, I guess, at whether or not I could be, a starting point guard in the NBA. So I kind of came in and started out as a backup for John Bagley my first year with the Cavs, and coming in with that great draft class. And I still say to this day, I mean, give me any team in the NBA, a 1 year's draft. I mean, I would put that group up against anybody.
Right.
The one guy that nobody even remembers and thinks about that was drafted in the second round after me was Johnny Newman. And
sir.
And Johnny
I was going to bring that up to you, Mark, because he had a very strong NBA career.
No doubt. He didn't stick with us all the way, but that was unbelievable. Brad, Ron, like you mentioned, Hot Rod was sitting there. They get me. I'm kind of an afterthought at 25, with all the other stuff. And so we come in and we got 6 rookies that year. on our roster, and Wayne came in, Lenny, and they threw us into the wolves, right away.
Yeah.
Brad, Ron started, Hot Rod played, I played, some solid backup minutes, 15, 18 minutes a game. We got our feet wet, and we thought we were all coming because, coming from the programs that we came from in college, Brad, North Carolina, Ron had a lot of wins at Miami. I was used to winning at Georgia Tech, and we were like 31-51 our first year.
Mhm.
And looking back, that was pretty darn good compared to some of the years some of these teams have had. But we thought, man, we stink. I'm like 31 wins. I said, I didn't lose 51 games, man. I don't know if I lost that many my whole college career. And, but it was that next year, when, they drafted Kevin Johnson in the lottery.
Mhm.
And so you had Bagley, you just drafted a lottery pick. I'm sitting there. It's not looking real good for me because I had a little bit of an up and down rookie year just because I had my appendix taken out midway through. That cost me a month of the season. And so, I was a little bit up and down. And so they probably still weren't quite sold that I was going to be the guy down the road. So they draft Kevin Johnson. And I just remember getting myself in the best shape of my life that following summer, knowing that I was going to have to come in and play for my life, and try to keep my job. And then over the course of the summer, they trade Bagley, and then Kevin Johnson is negotiating his contract when camp starts for about a couple weeks. And so for 2 weeks, I had the team to myself, and I was rolling by the time KJ showed up. And we just went at it every single day. And I say this often, to Lenny and Wayne and the whole organization's credit, they gave me a shot to win that job, and that's not always the case when you draft a lottery pick.
Right.
It's, hey, if you draft a lottery pick, you're going to play him no matter what. And, but I think they saw something in me, Lenny and Wayne, and they legitimately let me win that spot. And I played well enough, as coming in, that that's when they made the Larry Nance trade, and that really turned the corner for us. We make a late push that season and make the playoffs, and we never missed them. The rest of my time with the Cavs, and so it was a special group to come in with. My road was a little bit windier than Brad and Ron and some of the other guys, but I love playing. I mean, I loved playing in Cleveland. I love the fans. They were so good to me and my family over the years, and playing with such a great group of guys. And I think this team this season for the Cavs, I think that's what I noticed more than anything else. Yeah, they're young. They got a lot of talent, but they like playing with each other, and they seem to genuinely like each other. And when you have that in a pro sports team, you got a real chance at being a really good team, because that's just something that 90% of the teams don't have.
Yeah. Mark Price too, and always looked upon, by the way, as Mark said, he wasn't the biggest point guard, and see, he was the angelic assassin though, Kenny.
Yes.
That's and I'm telling you, that's how, because at that time, before I started doing the Cavaliers TV play-by-play, I was doing a pre and post game and halftime, during the late 80s when that squad was coming together. And, Mark showed, I've never seen Mark at the time, honestly, your side pick and roll or your top pick and roll usually it was with Brad, but occasionally after you got Larry Nance would get involved in it, Hot Rod would get involved in it. And just whether it was your ability to split it and get inside to get in the paint and either make a pass or connect on a short jumper. Do you think that was something it was because of the unification and how much everybody on that team was all about team and we're going to win this together. Was that a big as reason as any for then by the time year 3 for you rolls around? You were mentioning about a 31-51 record in year 1, right? Well, 2 years later, that jumps up to 57-25. You guys are averaging 109 points per game and had one of the smoothest, sweetest, everybody connected offenses I've seen in the NBA. Did you feel early on that we can make this happen, all of us?
Oh, no doubt. We, like I said, we got thrown to the wolves that first year. And even though we only won 31 games, by the end of that year, it's like, we were like, okay, we belong. We were playing the best of the best, as a bunch of rookies. And I'm talking, you can argue, eras and this and that, but every single night you were playing, what people don't realize too in that era was, there was only 24 teams.
Right.
And so that just made every team deeper. Every team was 8. You had 3 or 4 guys that were capable of coming off the bench that could light you up. And so, you're going in every night and playing against that kind of competition. By the end of that first year, over the summer, the second year, I just remember our conversations with one another, that, hey, we can take a big step up this year, because we know how to prepare. We know what we're about to go into. You're used to playing 82 games instead of 30. And so all those adjustments, build so much confidence in you, when you get through and like we did, and they stuck with us all year. They played our young guys, big minutes all year long, and it paid off down the road.
Mark Price, our guest here on the R&R podcast. Thrilled to have the legendary Cavs point guard with us. The number 25 hangs from the rafters at now Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse, but he put it there playing at the Richfield Coliseum, and I miss that old place. When I drive by there and I just see a grass field, it's like, man, all those memories that people don't know about that are young like us, right, Mark? That place, what was that like for you guys when you built this thing and you're playing in that place where the people are literally on top of you, and that's as loud of a building, and I miss it to this day, as I've ever been in. So what's it like from a home court advantage when you guys got rolling in that third year, winning 57 games?
Oh, it was great. I loved playing at Richfield. It was such a home court advantage. The first part of it being the other teams hated having to come there.
Right.
It was like, either they stayed downtown, had to drive 40 minutes to get to it, before the game, or they had to stay in Richfield where there was only one hotel and no place to eat. It was like, and so just from the get-go, you knew you were playing people that didn't want to be there to start with. And so that was a little bit of an advantage. And then it just kind of grew. And it was the thing that was neat to me as our team continued to grow and get better by that third year. I just remember our first year, it was like when the Richfield was packed, half of it was for the other team,
Right.
When, there was a lot of empty seats because people were wearing bags over their heads, right, for the season or so before we got there. So it wasn't like we walked into a bunch of momentum, with the fans. And so it was kind of a wait and let's take and see kind of approach with the fans early on. But, you'd go, Boston would come to town, and there'd be so much green. There'd be so much green in that arena, and the Lakers would come, and you'd see yellow and purple, and it was just, and that really irritated us. And we were like, by year 3, that's going to be a lot more, blue and orange in the stands, and that's what you saw as it kind of moved forward. You start seeing less and less of other jerseys, and that place being filled up with proud Cavs fans.
Yeah, no question about it. Hey, we got to get our first break in. When we come back, want to start comparing Mark Price's first 3 years with Darius Garland's first 3 years, and we're hopeful that DG's career will take the same path as Mark's to all NBA first team and number what is it, 10, I think, DG wears now hanging from the rafters maybe at some point, and you'll be surprised how eerily similar Mark's numbers and Darius's numbers are for the first 2 years for the Cavaliers. We'll get into that when we come back here on the R&R podcast.
Hey, it's Tito, host of the Premier Fantasy Podcast. Get all the news and analysis you need to dominate your fantasy league. I've been doing this as long as anybody in the business. I can help give you the edge in your leagues. It's the Premier Fantasy Podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
And we continue with the R&R podcast here on the Press Play Podcast Network, powered by Northfield Park, MGM Northfield Park. If you're looking for something fun to do, head on out to Northfield Park and bring home a winner. And Michael, you got something you want to get into with Mark before we compare him and Darius Garland's first 3 years about the good old days. Go ahead.
Yeah, Kenny and I, as big NBA and hoop guys, are just thrilled, delighted to have Mark with us. And Mark, you a moment ago in the first segment, quickly mentioned the Boston Celtics and all the green that was in the crowd. And when I think of you and Brad and Hot Rod and Larry and your teams, to me, Boston certainly one of them, but you guys had just absolute combat type wars with the New York Knicks, the Detroit Pistons, and the Chicago Bulls, who were all outstanding. And Mark, in that year, it ultimately turned out that, so many of your Cavaliers teams' playoff losses were to the Chicago Bulls. And if you could give us a sense of what that competition was like against and those four teams in particular, right, that you guys had just outstanding matchups with, an absolute, I thought, the NBA at its finest during those years.
Oh, no doubt. And most of the teams that you're mentioning, of course, were in the Eastern Conference.
Yes.
And, they used to call it the East of, the beast of the East, back in those days. I mean, it was like every single night was just like going to war. I mean, obviously Boston, when we first came into the league, it was the Celtics, and then it kind of moved on to the Pistons, and then it, moved on to Chicago. But I mean, you had the Knicks in there, you had us. I mean, Philadelphia had Barkley and those guys. I mean, it was like every single night. And as I mentioned in the first segment, because there was only 24 teams, you played all those teams more, you played teams in your division
six times.
So we're having to play Detroit, Chicago, and a team that we didn't even mention, Milwaukee, was always very strong, playing back in the Mecca back in the day.
The Mecca, yeah.
And so having to play those guys 6 times, you just got to where you really didn't like each other. It's just because you just went at it, and you just developed these rivalries, and you didn't see guys hopping from team to team like they do now. I mean, it's like Bird wasn't going to go play for Detroit or Chicago. He wanted to beat those guys. We didn't want to go play for those teams. We wanted to beat them. And so it was like there was these just kind of real rivalries going on that I think that the NBA is missing right now, that we had in those days. And there was just so many, as you mentioned, so many great teams, but it made you bring your A game. Because if you didn't, you were going to get it handed to you, and so you just had to stay ready and prepared. And as Kenny said, we had years where we were playing that competition and winning 57 games.
Right.
And so that just shows how good we were, even though we, had our problems with the Bulls in the playoffs for a number of reasons, injuries being a part of it. But, what I tell people all the time, even the year that Michael hit the shot, I mean, most of your average fan thinks that was probably to win the NBA championship, the way they kind of promote that. That was a first round series, a 5-game series. And what other people don't know either is that we beat Chicago 6 times that year.
Yeah.
I remember.
We were a better team. We were a better team than the Bulls. And
yes,
I was injured. I didn't play the first game of that series. We were banged up, and even with all that, it took a miracle shot to beat us. And so that's when people ask me about that, that's how I tell it, because even though we were banged up and whatever, it took the greatest player of the history of the game to beat us on a great shot.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, the rival, Larry Bird, Isaiah Thomas, Charles Barkley, Michael Jordan, Patrick I mean, just those are just the stars. Yeah. I don't know. Was Terry Cummings playing for the Bucks maybe back then? Sidney Moncrief? I don't know.
Junior Bridgman. Yeah.
Bridgman. Yeah. All those guys. So, I mean, like you said, Mark, with only 24 teams, the rosters were loaded back then for you guys. Obviously yours was loaded, but so was everybody else's. So your backups are going against backups that could be starters on other teams.
Oh, no doubt. You had Vinnie Johnson coming off the bench for Detroit,
the microwave.
You know, we got a guy, that started with Atlanta, John Battle, was a guy that could come in and give you 20, on a given night. And I mean, every team had those one or two guys that were just instant offense dudes off the bench, and
right.
And it was so much fun.
Yeah. All right. Your second and third year. And for people tuning in, we're talking with Mark Price, and I want to give the numbers as to why we're going in this direction. Year number 2 for Mark Price. He takes over, like he told us. Kevin Johnson was drafted, but his loss of sitting out the first couple of weeks, Mark's gain, and Mark takes over 16.6 assists, goes 50, 48, and 88 shooting percentages in year number 2. Darius Garland in year number 2 for the Cavaliers, 17.6 assists, 45, 39, and 85. So not the shooting percentage of Mark, but the points and the assists are the same. Year number 3, Mark Price makes his first all-star team, dropping 19 points a game, 8 assists, and he joins Larry Bird at the time for the 50, 40, 90 club, 52% from the field, 44 beyond the arc, 90% from the free throw line. Garland's third year, right now, 20 points a game, 8 assists a game, 47, 37, 91. So the stats are eerily similar, Mark, and I'm just curious, when did you gain the confidence and what did it take? Was it, Lenny, a former point guard, coaching you up? Was it going against KJ? Was it all those players we talked about and teams that we talked about that made you, the all-star in year number 3? And what do you think about how similar DG's numbers are to yours?
Well, it is very eerily similar, like you said. And, I haven't got to see, like I said, the Cavs play a lot of games, but the games I have watched, and even last year, I watched some games and I was like, this kid's going to be really good, and I really enjoy watching him play. I think you can tell, and there comes a point, particularly in what a lot of people don't realize, and the toughest position to learn in the NBA is a point guard position. And I know it's evolved somewhat now, whereas, you see point guards shooting 23s a game sometimes or something like that. Yeah. And so it has evolved into more of a scoring position. When I first came into the league, it wasn't like that. You had more point guards that were in the mold of a Maurice Cheeks, a Mo Cheeks, and Philly, and a guy that ran the team, got the ball to the star players, and if he was open, he'd knock down a 15, 18-foot jumper. And I came in, and I think that was one thing that Lenny Wilkins really saw in me early, that a lot of people were, well, he's a point guard that shoots too much, or he's a two guard in a point guard's body. I heard all those things coming out of college, and so I think a lot of pro teams were a little bit maybe scared of me, or maybe I wasn't a fit to be a point guard. I was too small. I was, like they said, I was a shooting guard in a point guard body. Well, Lenny understood that you can learn some of the other stuff, as a point guard. You can't teach somebody to shoot it like I did,
Right.
And so he let me have that freedom, and because he knew the distance I could shooting it from the 3-point line, that made guys have to come out. They couldn't back off. They couldn't go under screens, or I was going to knock it down. And so that really opened up the floor for me, and really just kind of opened my eyeballs as big as golf balls, because I could penetrate. That opened up the floor to, use my ability and my quickness to get in the paint. And then that was when I was able to get it to the other guys for dunks and, shots. And and whatever the case may be. And I just kept growing in that confidence the more we played, and we had such weapons. It was like every night I was playing with a smorgasbord, man. It's like, big Brad Rowan, what a big target there. And he was such a good passer, and, Larry Nance and Hot Rod's athleticism. And then you had guys like Craig and Steve Kerr over the years that had the ability to shoot the three. So, I'm coming off, and not only am I looking for my shot, but my head's on a swivel to find the open guy, and whoever get it to a sweet spot.
Mark,
go ahead, Reg.
Yeah, you mentioned, and I used to just thrill at practice of watching you shoot, because I thought, you are such an exhaustive shooter. You shot hours and hours, and as you look back at it in retrospect, was it that it was just everything you put in? Did you want to you kind of alluded to it a moment ago, but was it that you thought, I'm going to show everybody that I'm going to be one of the best damn shooters in NBA history, because you were, and that's what you developed into. But was that something that was at the forefront of your mind as you started the career and seeing that this is something I can be?
I always had, a lot of confidence in my shooting ability. Stepping into the NBA stage, obviously you have the speed of the game, you have the, length of the players. You're playing, against 6'4", 6'5" point guards now at times. So learning to create space for yourself to be able to get your shot off, learn to get your shot off quicker, learn to keep developing different moves. It was one thing that I took pride in, that I tried to do every single summer, was whether I would see another player, a move he might make, or an ability that something had, I always tried to add at least one thing to my offensive repertoire, because you know how good the NBA is at scouting and everything else. If you're limited to one or two things, man, they're going to learn to shut you down pretty quickly. And so to be creative at my size, and whether it be, coming off, like you said, learning to split a double team, shoot a floater in the lane, shoot a runner off 1 foot, right foot, left foot. I just was always trying to keep expanding my repertoire, so that no matter what situation I was in, there was a shot that I could come up with if I needed to. And I just always took pride in that. And of course, like you said, I put so much time into it that I had that confidence to make them in the games.
What did it mean to you in year 3 to make the All-Star team? Because DG is going to get to do it in his home city in Cleveland, right? So that's going to be extra special for him. But both you guys, in year number 3, you're making your first All-Star appearance. So what did that mean to you, and what was that experience like for you, getting to play in that first one? And you averaged double figures in all your All-Star games when you played.
Well, it was a bit overwhelming, at first, because you're just kind of like, here, I've been so focused on just trying to, make it in the NBA, establish myself, as a starting point guard in the NBA. And the thing for me that I always liked was that I was always a coach's pick. All 4 years I made the All-Star team, and that meant, obviously, if you get to start in the All-Star game, that's really cool. The fans vote for you and stuff, but it meant more to me to get picked by the guys that really know, who deserves to be there. And so that the other coaches felt I was one of the best point guards in the NBA and the Eastern Conference with, you can go down the list at all the great point guards that were in the East at that time. So it was obviously, I was very humble, but obviously very excited that I had, achieved that at that point in my career, considering only, 2 years before that I was a backup.
Right. What do you remember about the first All-Star game you ever played in?
It was, it was, very, like I said, it was a little bit intimidating. I'm trying to think. Here I am. I can't even remember my own All-Star games, but I'm trying to think. Was it Houston? Was that the where the game was being played. I can't quite remember.
I'll Google it here in a second. I think so.
I think your first one was in Houston. Yes.
Yeah.
And of course they played it in the Astrodome.
Yeah.
And so that in itself,
Great sight lines for shooting
oh,
the deep
man.
ball, huh, buddy?
I think in warm-ups, I think there was more air ball. I saw more air balls to All-Stars in warm-ups than I'd ever seen. But you know, it's just it was so like such a surreal experience for me getting to be, you know, on the same team with guys like Larry Bird and Isaiah Thomas, and you know, just all the great players, Kevin McHale's, and just go down the list of all the great players, Michael Jordan and all those guys, of course. And so, hey, I'm one of them, and to interact with those guys and to have them look at you as a peer, you know, as an equal. And it was just for my confidence, it was like, I was so like jacked up. I mean, you know, like getting because those were guys that, you know, I used to be my heroes when I was a kid, you know, and I'm out there playing in an all-star game with them. So it was really, really cool.
Outstanding stuff with Mark Price here on the R&R podcast. We'll get another break in here. We got plenty more coming your way, talking to Mark about his days as an all-star point guard with the Cavaliers. And we'll get some thoughts from him on maybe some advice he'd give that young all-star point guard the Cavaliers have in Darius Garland moving forward. That's when we return to the Regai and Rhoda podcast here on the Press Play Podcast Network.
Looking for new insights on the Cleveland sports scene with a unique side of Cleveland sports history? Then you found the perfect podcast. I'm John Sable.
And I'm Scott Sable, and we're hosts of the Sable Brothers on the Baseline podcast, a podcast about Cleveland sports, but not your typical podcast about the land's sports teams. Join us as we embark on a journey of sharing a unique and historical side of Cleveland sports history with the help of some former Cleveland sports stars and other historical figures.
All right here on the Sable Brothers on the Baseline podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
And welcome back to the Regai and Rhoda podcast here on the Press Play Podcast Network. We are powered by MGM Northfield. We thank them for being on board with us once again, and we're thrilled to have Mark Price with us here today, talking Cavaliers basketball from the good old days back when he played and was an all-star, as well as the current Cavaliers, who are a game out of first place as we're taping this podcast in the Eastern Conference with a very young basketball team that mirrors some of the things Mark's teams brought to the court each and every night. And Michael, let's go back to those days because you know, we mentioned his name earlier, but you have something you want to get from Mark about his head coach from back in the days.
Well, sure. And because obviously Wayne Embry and Lenny Wilkins so instrumental in putting together this era we're talking about that Mark excelled in with his Cavalier teammates. But Mark, how much have you thought of, or what did it mean to you? Here you are. You mentioned a little bit earlier about the confidence shown by your head coach, Lenny Wilkins, who also was an undersized point guard in his playing career as well. Just how much of the relationship that you developed with Lenny and the confidence he showed in you had a large part to do with the success that you ultimately achieved?
Well, you know, like I said, I had so much respect for Lenny. You know, first of all, you know, he was a great point guard, you know, himself. And so to play, you know, to be a Hall of Famer, you know, as a player, obviously I was trying to continue to grow and learn the point guard position. So being able to play for a guy like Lenny, that's like a dream come true, you know, for a young point guard. And so I just was like a sponge. And the thing that was great about Lenny, and we had such similar personalities, I think that was another thing that we got along so well. Lenny was a quiet guy. He wasn't a yeller. He wasn't a screamer. We just could have conversations, you know, and he thing I always appreciated about Lenny, and I think all the players did, was that Lenny would never like try to embarrass you in front of your teammates or anything. If there was any kind of thing he wanted to talk to you about or correct you, it was always, you know, after practice, or pull you over to the side and just kind of have a conversation with you. And you just kind of took it in and just had, so much respect. And like I said, for him to hand me the ball my second year in a circumstance where I'm sure most people were probably wanting to see KJ or whatever, the draft pick, but Lenny, was firm in the fact that I had won that opportunity, and he stuck with me. He gave me that opportunity. And so there was that sense that, hey, I'm going to work my butt off for this guy, because he believes in me. Yeah. And so our relationship was always really good. And, just from him playing the point guard position, he just saw things that other people wouldn't pick up, because as a point guard, there's just so much going on. Like I said, the NBA position, not only, as a scorer, I'm looking for my shot, but I got to make sure I'm keeping the big boys happy inside, and making sure they're getting their touches and running the play. And, and really the thing I see with Darius Garland as well, what's happening with that team is when you win your teammates respect and your coaches respect, then, you're really the leader of that team. And that's where I see us more than anything. I really see Darius growing in that from last year to this year. He's really taken the reins, and you can see that the Cavs follow his lead. And that's really kind of what happened with me as well, as the guy being the extension of the coach on the floor kind of thing as a point guard. When your teammates believe in you and they know, hey, you're going to make the right play, you're not about yourself, you're about the team, that's when the special stuff starts happening.
For everybody out there wondering, well, Lenny, what did he give Mark? He gave him the confidence, and Mark gave Lenny, 4 NBA All-Star teams, all NBA first team in 93, 3-time all NBA third team, 2-time NBA 3-point contest champion, 50-40-90 club, and the number 25 retired by the Cleveland Cavaliers, and 10,000 points, 4,000 assists. So, Lenny saw something in Mark, and Mark gave it right back with those numbers, and some great memories, some of the best, the Cavaliers have had. And still, I believe, Michael, correct me if I'm wrong on this, I believe Mark is still the only Cavalier to make all NBA first team that isn't named LeBron James, if memory serves me correct. Yeah, nobody else.
First team, no.
Yeah, so nobody. It's Mark and LeBron. That's it.
Right, and because again, Mark, because we've mentioned him, Kevin Johnson drafted. Were you surprised when they moved on from Kevin Johnson? And that pretty much solidified things. I think it worked out very well for everybody, but did it surprise you?
Yeah,
as your backup.
It did surprise me a little bit that it happened so quickly. But I think, I think they started seeing with me and Brad, and Ron at the time. And, we had, Elo, and there was that one piece that we were kind of missing, that veteran presence on the team. And Larry obviously was a very talented player. And so I think they saw a window to fast track, playoff time, because I think initially maybe they had started that season thinking, well, maybe by year 3, we'll be good enough to crack the playoffs. And I think they saw the progression that we were making quickly, and that one piece could make all the difference. And they rolled the dice, which every trade is. It always is rolling the dice to a certain extent. But that was one of those trades that was great for everybody. I mean, Kevin thrived in Phoenix, and I was really happy about that for him. And Larry, became probably my favorite teammate of all time. He just is an amazing guy in the locker room. He really helped take it to the next level. Like I said, and we made a great run at the end of year 2 that got us into the playoffs and started it happening.
I'm looking at it right now, side by side. Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, Lowry Markkanen, Hot Rod, Larry Nance, Brad Daugherty, Mark Price, Darius Garland, right? I mean, you look at the teams and how they were put together, and you just mentioned the trade for Larry. Well, the Cavaliers go out and get Karis LeVert, a shooting guard now that they're going to add to the backcourt with Darius Garland to provide some more scoring. And the defense you guys played back in the day too. And that's the other thing that Larry really brought to the table. With his wingspan and timing and one of the greatest shot blocking forwards in NBA history, Mark, what did that do for the team, knowing that Larry, along with Hot Rod and Brad, you had rim protectors back there like this current team has right now?
It made me feel really good. Because the biggest joke Larry and I had with each other, the only time Larry would get mad at me is when a guy guy I was guarding beat me off the dribble and I would foul him, because Larry was like, "Don't foul him. I'm going to get him at the rim." It's like, I got your back. And so that's the only time Larry got mad at me, when I'd foul a guy. And he's like, I'm going to take care of it for you, So right. I never worried too much when I didn't let guys beat me on purpose, but, I never worried too much when a guy got by me.
Yeah. And these guys
That's
have,
great.
the security blanket back there, right? Safety net, whatever you want to call it. Because Allen and Mobley, as a rookie, it's amazing. He plays about like he's a 3 or 4 year veteran. Not a lot of emotion, right? And does it at both ends. And it's just the pieces of the puzzle coming together like you guys did, and the camaraderie. I go back to when we did the Larry Nance fantasy camp the one year, right? And all you guys came back together for that. And Joe Tate, God rest his soul, was there. And Mark Heffernan, again, God rest his soul, put that all together. But you guys remained close. And that means something, doesn't it, to a good team or becoming a good team?
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. I said that earlier in the podcast. I think that's a rarity, just in professional sports in general, guys jumping around from teams to teams, and to have a core group of guys that stay together for 6, 7, 8 years. If you can do that and find the right group, you have a chance to be really good for a long time. And I know, the NBA's, the salary caps and all the things are different now than they used to be. And there's a little bit more challenge to keeping guys for a long time together. But, if they can keep this group together as long as possible, I think they got a chance to be good for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mark and I worked together, and I wish it'd last longer. It was just the one season that, Mark was brought in to be the color analyst at Fox Sports Ohio when we worked together that season, and had a terrific amount of fun. And I really thought, had you stayed with it, that you were going to ultimately, you'd be calling games right now on the network, my man, nationally. But overall, did you enjoy that side of the league and perspective of having to, or was it difficult for you to at times have to be constructively critical and being honest about what the viewer is seeing that night?
Yeah, it was a great experience for me. Obviously, you made it really easy for me. You were such a great partner to have and do that, especially my first experience at doing broadcasting. And I enjoyed it. I think there's just a little bit more in me, which, eventually led to the coaching side of things. I just really enjoy, teaching the game and trying to help young players develop and see those things. And, I enjoyed, I guess, talking about the games and what was going on during the games and those kind of things. But I guess the coaching side, just ended up pulling me. I was a little bit more intrigued going that way rather than sticking with the broadcasting.
Yeah. Hey, Kenny, I'm not going to name names, but I know this will make you laugh. You know what I love to Mark so much? I can't tell you how many times that, no names out here, but I can't tell you how many times during the timeout, commercial break, he'd elbow me and say, "I'd have killed that guy." And I used to just absolutely love it because, I know you would have. This guy couldn't check you for a second. I know you would have killed that guy. But that was all that I thought that just.
That's great.
To me, this man here, the ultimate competitor, and did it at 6 feet tall, Kenny,
right,
in this league. And to me, that you know what I mean. There's not many that have done it like him. That accomplished at 6 feet tall. It's difficult. Mark will say no, it helped, but I still have visions. I mentioned it earlier. When he would split that double team on that high screen roll, Mark, I mean, man, I believe you're the one that I think perfected that. And now you see so many other point guards, they're trying to incorporate that when they get that either high side screen or straight up screen roll. Man, you perfect that. You started that as a point guard, that double came, boom, you're splitting it. You're in the paint, either taking that short J or kick into somebody. And, I think it revolutionized the game. I really do.
Well, I got a great story on how that came about.
Okay.
Please.
And that was, we were playing the Philadelphia 76ers, and that was back in the day, which they don't realize now, that you played back-to-back games against the same team, home and home type deals, and so we play Philly in Cleveland the first night. And I think I have my rookie high that night, 29 points, something like that, 29, 30. I'm just coming off ball screens, just nailing threes, right? So we go back to Philly the next night, right? And obviously their scouts are like, well, we're not going to let that kid come off and just shoot the ball. So they start blitzing me, hard.
Yeah.
Every time I came off that screen. Well, one time I came off and the big jumped a little too soon. And I just instinctively, it opened up like the Red Sea, man, right there, and so instinctively, I just kind of threw the ball through there and came in, pulled up from free throw line and hit the shot. And so it just kind of happened. And I'd never forget, because Mo Cheeks, we're running down the floor after that. He goes, man, that was a sweet shot.
Yeah.
And so I kind of, from that point on, I was like, well, if Mo Cheeks thinks that's a good move, man, I'm gonna keep working on it. And I just kept going with it and, perfecting it. But I don't know if I was the first guy to do it, but I get credit for being the first guy to kind of use it on a regular basis. That's for sure.
I always give you credit for it.
Me too.
Again, and then I seem like now Isaiah's doing this a little bit after he's watched Price do it. He stepped through that as well. Him and Dumars with Detroit, but
it's a copycat league.
It is
guys
a
see
copycat
things,
league.
right?
It is a copycat.
Like
league.
you mentioned about your off season, you'd see somebody do something. I'm going to shoot that 1 foot runner. You know what I mean? I don't. It wasn't conventional, but it doesn't matter anymore at the NBA level, right?
No. Hey, what matters is, does it go in?
There you go. That's the biggest thing. All right, I got to throw this your way, because I have an old college roommate from Chicago, and whenever I see him, we have this conversation, and I tell him that had the Cavaliers not traded Ronnie Harper, you guys would have won at least one NBA championship and figured out a way to beat the Bulls with Ronnie and you in the backcourt, because I thought you guys were just emerging together as one of the best backcourts in the league. Am I far off base on that, or do you have those same thoughts?
I agree with you 110%. Ron and I were just fantastic together. The way he played, the way I played, we complemented each other so well. He was just, and not only that, but that allowed Craig Elo to come off the bench. Going back to those, 6th, 7th, 8th guys that got popped coming in off the bench. And so when we lost Ron and they made that trade, Craig obviously did a good job as a starter, but it wasn't, we didn't have the same, because he was that one guy that we didn't have that could just go get a bucket. You know what I mean? It was like, he could just drive it, 6'6", 6'7", athletic. He could just go get you a bucket. And he was just such a smart basketball player too. I love playing with him. I hated it when the trade happened. We talk about it whenever we run into each other all the time. And, he tells me all the time, even when championships with the Bulls and, all the things that he was able to accomplish, he tells me his favorite team was that Cavs team. He loved it.
Wow.
He loved Cleveland. He loved the Cavs, and it's too bad it didn't work out. But he obviously went on and had a fabulous career and won some championships, and I'm really happy for him for that.
And being around the league too, what Mark you're saying is absolutely true. Because trust me, I've heard this from Chicago Bulls people. You know who else was real happy when that trade happened? Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, because you guys killed them. When I say killed them, you know what I mean? I mean, they know that every night that they played you, like we were saying, those 6 times a year, man, they were going to have to bring that lunch pail and that hard hat to come to work, because you and Harper gave them a lot of problems on their defensive end, right? And you guys probably knew that. Again, I mean, I firmly believe that that you're winning the championship, or certainly be in an NBA's finals a couple of times anyway. You know.
Well, we'll never know, but I certainly believe that as well. And the thing was with a team like Chicago, Michael had to defend on on the other end of the court. Like Michael might get his 30, but Harp was going to get 20, 25. And so Michael was actually going to have to expend some energy on the defensive end of the floor. And so it just creates a different scenario, and so who knows, but it's always good things to talk about on a podcast, right?
Yeah,
sure,
absolutely.
No doubt.
Hopefully Karis LeVert can give the Cavaliers a little Ron Harper to go along with that, DG, so we can have maybe a Bryce Harper flashback from the late 80s, early 90s. Mark, what advice would you give DG now, okay? Because the league's starting to take notice of him. He's an all-star, okay? He ain't creeping up on anybody anymore, right? He's not going to be the surprise player. He's a 20-8 guy a night, and he's an all-star. So from this point forward, what advice would you give Darius Garland about what he's going to see now?
Well, I think it doesn't get easier, obviously, because now, like you said, he's not sneaking up on anybody. He's not on a bad Cavs team anymore, where they're, not really paying much attention, probably not doing a lot of prep or whatever. So, he's going to start getting everybody's A game. He's going to have that respect now, being an all-star player, that every guard he goes up against now is going to try to, raise their game to try to play against Darius Garland. And so, he'll do fine. He's a great player. He seems to be. I haven't got to spend a lot of time with him. I've met him a couple times, but he seems like he's got a good head on his shoulders and has a good work ethic, and I'm sure he'll do fine. But, it's just a new day where the expectation level from everybody will be raised, and you got to bring it every night, and that's part of being a pro. And I think he'll just continue to thrive in that role. I think he'll take that on and not shy away from it. But it's still going to take a lot of work. Keeping yourself healthy, doing all the things you need to do to be successful and have a long career. So, I wish him the best. I think he's a great young player, and it's exciting watching the Cavs this year. And, hopefully, they'll have a good playoff run. I'm excited for them.
Yeah, we all are, right, Reg? I mean,
Absolutely
we didn't expect the playoffs. We thought maybe play-in games this year, if anything, but maybe not third or fourth in the East. Yeah,
for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Again, it's like we talked about, though, with both Wayne Embry and Lenny.
Yeah.
Again, you got to give a lot of credit here to, the front office, general management, Kobe Altman and Bickerstaff that have put this thing together. And it does kind of reflect, now we're going back. Think about it, guys. We're going back over 30 years now to when Wayne Embry and Lenny Wilkins did this with you, Mark. And I mean, the game has changed. I guess, do you like the way the NBA game is played now? I mean, honestly, if you're being real bottom line with us, or did you prefer it, the style that, and how if you've discussed how you and your teams had to play?
Well, I think, obviously I'm going to come across as being, old school guy, type thing, but I just miss the all around game. I know now it's all about threes, layups, and free throws, and that kind of mentality. And I'm a 3-point shooter, but I tell people all the time, twice I led the NBA in 3-pointers attempted per game at 5.
How about that?
I led the league twice, shooting 5 threes a game. and everybody thought, hey, that dude's shooting a lot.
Unbelievable.
You know, that's like a first quarter stat.
That's a first. That's a first quarter thing for most guys now.
And so, you know, being a 3-point shooter, though, even honestly, it gets a tad boring watching 85, 93s go up in a game. And I know it's the analytics and everything. That's why I'm kind of loving this Cavs team, because I know they still shoot a lot of threes, but now you got this inside presence and throwing it into the bigs and you know, getting more of that kind of just, hey, let's find who the open guy is and let's move the ball and let the ball find the man. And it just that's throwback to kind of how we played. And you know, we didn't shoot as many threes, obviously, as they do now and spread the floor. But I kind of wish it would kind of somewhere be between the two, so to speak.
Okay.
Yes, would be my perfect world. I would have liked to have gotten to shoot a few more threes than I did.
Sure. And the other thing you would have liked are the salaries, right? That these guys are getting paid.
Yeah, I would definitely like the salary.
I mean,
no doubt.
We're talking in upwards of 45, 50 million a year, Mark, for these guys. I want to dive into your financial past, but I don't know how much you made in your entire career. Some of the guys maybe make more in a year than you guys made for your careers back in the day.
I can guarantee you most of them I made in my career. So that's an easy question to answer.
You know, so that it's amazing how, you know, how that's come along and everything. And before we let you go here, Mark, just some thoughts of your greatest memories when you were a Cavalier. Is there a specific game? Is there something that stands out that you look back on that is always there in the front of your memory? And, you know, you talk about it with people because it was so special.
I mean, there was, you know, I mean, we just talked about the rivalries and everything. There was so many great games, obviously, you know, the matchups with the Bulls, but probably if I had to pick a favorite, you know, it probably would have been Game 7 of the Eastern Conference semifinals against Boston in Richfield, Larry Bird's last game. We just dominated that game, you know, and kind of overcame a hurdle of, you know, the Celtic, you know, legendary, whatever,
right?
You know, leprechauns or whatever you want to call them, and so you know, and it also has given me bragging rights. I tell people all the time I ended Larry's career, but I'd probably have to. That was one of the, you know, the kind of great moments that really stands out for me, and the other one, obviously, at the top would be the night they retired my jersey, you know, for the Cavs. I mean, that was just, I mean, if I'd ever thought my jersey would be hanging in the rafters when I showed up in Cleveland in 1986, you know, if you'd have told people that, they'd have laughed you out of the place. But it was a special run, it was a special ride, it was a special team, group of guys, organization, and for my relationship really with the fans of Cleveland all those years. And that just means so much to me. And you know, it was definitely a great highlight of my life.
You're much loved here, man.
Yeah.
You always will be. And, you know, you are one of the premier elites to ever wear, not in a Cavaliers uniform, in my opinion, an NBA uniform, because of all the things that we've talked about tonight. So, you know, we greatly appreciate, Kenny and I, you coming on with us and sharing some time, but much admiration and respect for the way you did it, because you were one of the very best ever. And I mean that.
Well, I appreciate it, guys. You two have always been two of my favorite Cleveland guys, man. And I always enjoy getting to spend time with you, visiting and reminiscing about the good old days. But, you know, thanks for having me on. Let's do it again sometime.
We will. When the Cavaliers are deep in the playoffs, buddy, we're going to get you again.
All right,
we'll get into X's and O's then.
Then I can tell you how many of those guys couldn't guard me.
There you go.
I love it.
Love that. Hey, Mark, thanks so much. Be well, and we'll talk again down the road. All right.
All right, guys. Take care.
Thanks, Mark.
There he is, the legendary Cavaliers point guard, number 25, hanging from the rafters now at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. Mark Price joining us here on the Reg Eye and Rhoda podcast. Hope you all enjoyed that. We'll have plenty more to talk about with the Cavaliers as this season moves forward and into the playoffs, and get Mark back and other former Cavaliers on with us as well. So stay tuned for that right here on the Press Play Podcast Network.